The transfer portal is heating up. Recruits are decommitting all across the country, and coaches are being fired. We will talk about it right after the stinger. That's Chris Moxley. That is Felix Sharpe. I am Matt Bruening, and we have got a ton of college news going on after what was a crazy rivalry weekend that we will not be talking about today. But transfer portal has been heating up. We've got a ton of players expected to enter. The transfer window does not technically open up until December 9th, so a week from today. But a lot of players have already been putting their names in the bucket, and one of those, Felix, Chris Moxley. Now think about it. The three of us were the biggest Jaden Mayava fans coming into the season. We all talked about how we thought he would start a lot sooner than he did. I thought he's had a pretty good run, had some moments in that game yesterday, specifically those last two drives that did not look great. I'm sorry, on Saturday. But with what he has done, he has forced Miller Moss into the portal. Now, it is talked about with Alabama, LSU, UCLA, and Miami. Those were the top four teams that were kind of left at the top of the recruiting board for him, trying to get him when he was coming out of high school. Felix, do you see a good spot for him? Is there another team you think he could go to? Do we care?
Listen, I've had Jaden Mayava in my top 25 this whole time. I had Miller Moss somewhere in like the 40s. Okay, so, and I've been trying to tell you to trade for Jaden Mayava since like before the season began. Where does Miller Moss go? I don't know, Grand Valley, Saginaw Valley, somewhere, something like that. That would probably be appropriate for him. The dude was a walk-on, if I'm not mistaken, at USC. He didn't belong there. I don't know. I don't think it's a meritocracy at USC. I don't think that they play the best players. Otherwise, that wide receiver core would be like Makai Lemon, Zachariah Branch, and Deuce Robinson, and those would be the three. I don't know what's going on there at USC. They finally put in Jaden Mayava. Where does he end up? Who cares?
Well, I mean, Mox, do you care where Miller Moss goes?
No, we were all on Jaden Mayava. You threw 2 picks, whatever. I actually thought he played a pretty good game. I know those were backbreaking, but I thought he looked all right. You want to know the spot that I've heard?
Yeah, go ahead.
Michigan.
I thought about that, man. I thought about that.
I'm not joking about it either.
Yeah.
I really heard Michigan, and I think he's a great quarterback. Like obviously, won a little bit of competition there.
I disagree. I
disagree. Quarterback for the
no, I don't mean he's a great quarterback. Period. I mean he's a great quarterback for Michigan.
I
the
disagree.
State of the program, right? Like you want somebody to compete.
I would be a great quarterback for Michigan. I mean,
okay, so hang on. Felix is a fan of Michigan. So Felix, I will ask this question to you because I don't disagree, and I guess Miller Moss is a.
He's an upgrade.
He can run the offense. Yeah, he's bet. Well, I mean, we're not.
I know the bar is low.
We're not going to get into it. We're going to leave it alone. Yes, he is an upgrade over what Michigan currently has on that roster. But man, I think if you got Bryce Underwood coming in, you just start him from day one and let him go. Like I don't know why you would sit him for a year and risk losing him, even if you say, "Hey, it's your job next year." You think Moss just comes in as like the backup to Bryce Underwood? Why not just leave it Jaden Davis and whoever else they have on that roster?
So I heard they wanted to bring him in as like a faux competition / guy who started at a high level. You're starting Bryce day one. Like I don't think you're not.
Okay. Just, as long as we're all on the same page there.
I'm trying not to interrupt here. Bryce Underwood is the highest paid player in college football and would probably be one of the highest paid players in the NFL. Well, actually, probably not. But yeah, Bryce Underwood starting from day one. Let's not. And I'm usually the one that's like freshmen aren't going to start from day one. Yeah. Bryce Underwood is starting from day one. Now, before Bryce Underwood went there, would that have been a good spot for Miller Moss? Yeah, but really anybody. I mean, Caden Salter entered the transfer portal. Anthony Calandria entered the transfer portal. All of those guys would have been an upgrade over what Michigan has in their quarterback room now. So, I mean, to say he would be a fit at Michigan is like, yeah, but I mean, yeah.
He's not a powerful quarterback.
No, I agree with you. Leo Leo in the chat says he was a 4-star. I mean, there's a lot of 4-star quarterbacks that have not panned out. I mean, it was. I think a lot of people got really, really excited about that. What was it? The Holiday Bowl breaking the Holiday Bowl touchdown record, and we kind of said it wasn't it. Some people thought it was.
Well, remember the Heisman talk versus LSU in Game 1.
Oh, trust
like
me,
everybody was just
I've like pettily mentioned that on Twitter X multiple times. Man, I remember all these people talking about him being a Heisman hopeful and maybe one of the top quarterbacks to get drafted after that LSU game. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it'll be interesting. I think Alabama, LSU are out of the running. The two that are interesting to me are UCLA and Miami because they don't have any future plans as of right now. And he just feels like a Mario Cristobal quarterback. He just brings it and goes back to what he was beforehand. No. Back to what he had.
I'd rather have Reese Puffenbarger and Emory Williams down there at Miami. Reese Puffenbarger, I've been trying to say, hey, look, I think that this could be the guy that takes over after Cam Ward leaves because his play style is very similar to Cam Ward's. So, no.
Look, I'm not saying I like it. I don't like it. I would like to see Mario continue to evolve.
We spent 5 minutes too many on Miller Moss today.
That's true.
We really have.
We're gonna move on.
We really have.
Continuing on the transfer portal, Micah Hudson. He was a highly touted 5-star wide receiver. Michael, according to his coach, which is probably another reason why he transferred out. He is leaving Texas Tech. He enters the transfer portal again. 5-star rated wide receiver. He was our number 2 wide receiver behind Jeremiah Smith. Very, very talented player, very good athletically, sitting at, what did we have him at? I'm sorry. I lost my thought here. A 9.85 athlete, just incredible comps to Jordy Nelson, Julio Jones, Allen Robinson. Oh, that's not the right player. I completely messed that up. Anyways, right now, the top spots are Texas A&M, LSU, Tennessee, and Colorado. I mean, I would think any of the places he walked into, he's probably the wide receiver one outside of Texas. I mean, Colorado's legitimately losing their entire room this year. So, I mean, he could easily walk in and be the one there for Julian Lewis. LSU, I mean, they probably lose Kyron Lacey. I don't know if you really like anybody else in that room that he wouldn't. I would think, to me, he's better than anybody else in that room. Tennessee is interesting to possibly give Nico like a wide receiver who can do it all. The only room, obviously, I think he doesn't go in as the number 1 is Texas. Because I think you still got goodness, I'm just blanking on everything here because Jonte Cook left to the portal. But Ryan Wingo, who's had a really good freshman season. They are bringing in 2 5-star players in Jamie French and Khalik Lockett as well. I think Jamie French is probably close to as good as oh my God, I just blanked on his name. Now I want to call him
Hudson as a recruit.
Micah Hudson. So Mox, what do you think? Is there a specific place you'd like to see him go? I'm sorry, I'm just blanking. There's too much going on now.
This is why
I could here we go.
It was
and now Felix.
No, I don't know. I haven't even looked at the show sheet.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, so he was hurt in spring. Yes. And I think that really set him back to start the year. And they had 3 good wide receivers there in Kelly, Douglas, and Eakin. So it's not like that he was getting put behind trash. It wasn't a good look when the head coach didn't know his first name. Thought that was red flag number 1. But overall, I mean, I still think he's a talented player. Still think he's pretty good. Where he goes, I think those are all legit landing spots for him. I don't know. I'm a little worried, like more worried than I was a year ago, obviously. Like, I think you have to downgrade him, but I haven't seen enough to tell me he can't play high-level football, especially what we liked in his profile.
Yeah, Felix, you've kind of been one who's talked about over the past couple of weeks to trade him if you can, because you I know you weren't as high on him as some of us were, and you're saying his value dropped. If he were to go to one of those schools, would that increase his value for you at all, or is it just pretty much a wait and see, or again, continue if you can sell now if you can?
When's the last time we've seen like a transfer portal wide receiver? I haven't seen enough from Micah Hudson to be excited about him. Like, his value. I just think that it's a smart move to trade him right now, but that's kind of par for the case for if in campus Canton leagues, any freshman player, these kind of speculative guys. So I mean, no, I can't think of a situation where he would go to where I would be like, oh, I mean, maybe if we went to Michigan with Bryce Underwood, it would be the number one, which is not going to happen. I wish I could give you more on, where Oregon, I think would be a good spot. I think that I really love Dante Moore, and they're going to have Evan Stewart might come back with DeCory and Moore. They probably beat at number 2. I think Trayshawn Holden still has another year left, but that could be a spot where what Dan Lanning is building that you would be excited about it. Now that I think about it, Oregon, Alabama with Kalen DeBoer, those are probably 2 spots where I would be excited about. Okay, it's not just that it's Micah Hudson. It's like any player that's going into those situations I would be excited about. But outside of that, no, and quite frankly, I would trade him. If I had him right now, I'd trade him.
Well, I think go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
No, I just wonder what his value is, right? Like, are there buyers out there for Micah Hudson right now? Because if they are, then yeah, I'd trade him, but I just don't know the market.
Austin's buying him.
I mean, it depends on what you can get for him. I mean, we were talking about this a couple of shows ago, and Felix was saying, would you trade him for like a 3 or 4? I'm going to be honest. If someone's offering him for a 3 or 4, I might try and get a few shares of him. I still believe in the talent. And you know what? I think that's easily buy price. You both answered the question wrong on where he should go, by the way. The easy answer here, with this being Austin, like one of Austin's favorite players, is for him to go to Colorado, because all Austin does is hate watch Colorado all the time. And now to see one of his favorite players go there with Julian Lewis, a new quarterback coming
they
in.
love striking out with like Cordero Russell and those types of guys who are highly rated at one point. So that's actually,
but
you get Colorado bringing Kevin Concepcion and Micah Hudson to go pair with Julian Lewis. That's it. When what they got there with Draylon Miller, that's actually not a bad.
I mean, I really think, and Austin says he would buy him for a 3rd. So would I. I mean, because I do believe in the talent, and like if he, and I'm being also honest in that assessment, if he were to go to Colorado, like I do think he would step in there and probably be the wide receiver 1. I mean, Draylon Miller has looked good this year. They also have the other Miller. I forgot. I always say they're brothers, and they're not. But that would be a way for them to kind of rebuild that offense quickly, especially with Julian Lewis coming in there at quarterback, who is very much like Shedeur Sanders as a quarterback, so they don't have to change the offense much. Assuming Dion and Pat Shurmur stay, I don't think it would be a bad landing spot for him. But it'll be interesting to see where he goes. I think there will be a lot of teams calling for him again just because he was a 5-star wide receiver. You just mentioned Kevin Concepcion there, Felix, going into the portal as well. The top places that had recruited him were North Carolina, Florida State, and Wake Forest. We have Kansas State on here as well. I mean, Felix, you've kind of been a big fan of his since his freshman season. Your thoughts on him entering the portal? Is there a spot you like him going to? Or I know he's kind of had a weird season this year.
I'll tell you what would be the perfect spot for Kevin Concepcion. And Chris, you're going to agree with this, and there's no better answer. It's Missouri. Missouri would be the perfect spot for Kevin Concepcion because he would slide right into what Luther Burden does, be used around the line of scrimmage in all these strict kind of ways. I mean, North Carolina State, basically, NC State basically used him the same way as Luther Burden did. So if you want to see like a fit, imagine. I don't know what their offense is going to look like next year, Brady Cook, and who's going to be at quarterback there. But as far as role and maximizing their skill set, I can't think of a better spot than what Eli Drinkowitz does with Luther Burden to do the same thing with Kevin Concepcion. That's probably the best answer I've ever given on any one of these shows. It's a great answer.
I hadn't even considered that, and I actually think that's a really interesting fit because that is exactly who he is. And I mean, think of all the success that Drink has had even before Luther Burden with players operating out of that slot position, both in terms of fantasy and getting guys to the next level. Like he's done it at a lot of spots. So I put Kansas State on this list because his brother decommitted from NC State and flipped to Kansas State. If they want to play together, I did think that was notable. I thought that was the sign that Casey was going to transfer anyway. So definitely, I think it's interesting. Get him somebody to go with Avery Johnson, especially if Brown's portaling.
Okay. I'm trying to think of Missouri because I actually don't mind that answer. I was trying to think of who their quarterback would be because I guess they could go to the portal. Flip? He hasn't. But I mean, Felix always yells at me when I say I think these true freshmen could start. Most of them have actually, started. The ones I said would play at some point in time and start this year: Luke Kromenhoek, DJ Lagway.
Julian saying.
I didn't say Julian Sayin would start. I said there was Ohio State people who thought he was going to start. I thought Devin Brown was going to beat Will Howard. Well, I was wrong on that.
They'll bring a
worse, I don't think. But
they have enough money. They're well situated in NIL. They'll add somebody.
That'll be interesting to see. We have not seen, we've seen one, I guess, high-name quarterback hit to the portal. We'll mention in a minute. But if you guys like what we're doing here, please hit the like and subscribe button. It would make Felix very happy.
We're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers. You got to give them a goal. The call to action has to come
4,000 subscribers.
Trying to get to 4,000
again, we can switch this again. You can drive,
No, I just
like a backseat driver over here. Sam Horn, who I did love, but he's just clearly not it. And then Aiden Glover are all they have on there besides Drew Pine. If we're going to bring
Sam Horn still playing football, I thought he switched to baseball full time.
He's technically listed on their roster still as a football player. So I know he injured his elbow playing baseball, but I just don't think he's going to be it. So maybe Matt Zollers will get that opportunity. He is currently not flipped. But hey, if you guys are watching this, Felix, Austin, and myself, hopefully joined by big wide receiver guy as well, we'll be live Wednesday for 3 hours talking about all the recruiting. So if he does flip, we will be talking about that live. He is a player that we'll definitely be talking about. He's ranked in our top 10 quarterbacks of the class. Speaking of quarterbacks, Mike Valerie's favorite, the stud from Auburn, Hank Brown, enters the transfer portal. Pitt, Illinois, UAB were kind of the top teams there for him. I mean, do we care? I was just trying to give Mike a bone here.
No, he's not very good.
No.
I agree, but Mike Valerie might be watching. I like to give shout outs to my guys.
You got benched for Peyton Thorne, buddy. Go to the back of the line. It's true. Do not press go directly to jail. Don't collect $200.
All right. Well, here is a interesting player. I don't know that he has the NFL upside, but just for his kind of F it someone's down there somewhere, Anthony Calandry with what he did with Virginia brings some rushing upside. Do we have any thoughts on him? He was not highly recruited outside of Virginia. It was just Troy, Georgia State, and Furman that were kind of going.
You can go back to
him.
One Furman in the foothills of South Carolina. There,
that's Paladins.
Those were the teams that were in them. And by the way, I see the questions in the chat. We will get to those in a minute, but go ahead.
I mean, that's where he should go back to is Furman or Troy. Or he's an exciting G5 level player. He is a skilled player. Jake Hayner was a G5 player. Michael Pratt was a good. That's actually if Darian Mensah transfers. Go put him at Tulane, and he would be a good replacement for Darian Mensah.
Yeah,
I'm on a heater today. My answers are great today.
You've the pressure not hosting on you.
It's not hosting. I'm coming off the top of my head. I'm excellent.
Some of the chat semi disagree, but continue. Go ahead, Chris. I actually agree with Felix. I think he's a G5 player, but there are some people on our Devy team that like him and like his skill set. So,
yeah, I mean. I think he's a G5 level player. He's from Florida. I think he's from, I don't remember exactly where he's from. I don't want to be wrong about it because Florida people are prickly about that. FAU needs a quarterback. Zach Kitley is rumored to take this job. Pair him up with Kitley, see what they can do there.
Wow. I thought Zach Kitley would be the offensive coordinator at Alabama or USC. So you're telling me he's about to be the head coach at FIU? Jesus. What a fall from
now we had Tom Herman prior. Now we get Zach Kitley at FAU. So good for them, I guess. I don't know. Calandry, that's the level that Calandry should probably go to.
Yeah. I'm just going to mention these three names. I don't know that they really inspire any confidence. So if you have anything on any one of them, please go ahead. Chris Parsons from Mississippi State is entering the transfer portal. Florida State and SMU were the top other two teams on him. Ricky Collins from LSU entered the transfer portal. He was a 4-star from Woodlawn, Louisiana. Florida State and Purdue for him. He was, in my opinion, an exciting prospect, what he could do with his legs and arm. He had one of the stronger arms in the class last year. And then a guy I was personally very high on, I thought he would be a great fit for Colorado after Shedeur left. I don't think that's happened now with Julian Lewis coming in. But he was a 4-star from the Colorado Springs area. Colorado, Wisconsin, and Iowa State, Braden Dorman, who is very much like your typical pocket passer quarterback, strong arm, but not really anybody that's going to bring you any rushing upside. Any thoughts, or you guys want to move on to the big name that entered about 40 minutes before the show?
Chris's face says it all.
I think Ricky Collins does some interesting things. Maybe send him to the G5.
You just read the names off the clearance list at the dollar store.
Yeah,
no, don't care.
But so here's the thing. That's where I will semi disagree with you is what Chris just said. Other way, Ricky Collins. he is one that is interesting. Now, it's not a guy that you're probably rostering at this point, and a guy you likely will be able to pick up late in your supplemental drafts next year if he lands at a good spot. But what he can do with his legs and his arm, I do think if he goes to a G5 school, could be very intriguing. He was a guy that I was very high on last year. I thought, again, going into LSU with Mike Denbrock being there at the time with what he did with Jaden Daniels, again, Desmond Ridder, I thought was a perfect fit for Ricky Collins. Then when they obviously landed Bryce Underwood for a minute, I thought that was, that dream was kind of dead. Obviously, he flipped to Michigan, and then Denbrock went to Notre Dame anyways. All right, the big name, Caden Salter. He was a guy that, a lot of people here thought was going to have a great season, really kind of struggled this year. I mean, it really seems to be it's probably Auburn, right? He's just going to go ahead and follow his head coach over to Auburn, or,
there was a rumor that last year they didn't want him, which is why he withdrew from the portal. I don't know if that's true, but it certainly could be possible. Florida State's the other name that has come up now with Malzahn there. Kind of interesting. I don't know. I thought he was a lot better than he actually was. I watched it this year and I was like, this dude can't really throw the football. Maybe we took last year a little too for granted. He just didn't look very good, and he might make more, but Liberty has money. That's not like he's not getting a good NIL deal, and I don't know that he's an NFL prospect. So it's a weird situation.
Liberty definitely has money, especially now.
Oh yeah.
No politics. Matthew, you want to talk about the politics of Liberty University?
No, I'm gonna do my best, Austin, and steer this in a different direction. It'll be interesting to see if he does go to Auburn. I mean, if he does, we already know that Holden Grenier, who's been a backup there anyways, not a guy that we were very high on, has entered the portal. Does that maybe change things for their current? He was a 4-star last year.
Walker White.
Yeah, Walker White. Does he enter the transfer? Because right now, as of
I don't
right
think Walker
now,
White's any good.
5-star. Well, with Caden Salter going there right now, he hasn't flipped yet. There are obviously rumors that Deuce Knight might be flipping from Auburn to Ole Miss. But right now, Deuce Knight's coming in. I mean, if Caden Salter comes in, I think there's no shot Walker White has to get this job now. So I think Deuce Knight's a better quarterback anyways, but his best bet was to win the job this year. As Leo mentioned in the chat, Hank Brown is not. I did just look it up. He did post something on Instagram recently saying he has not entered the portal. So not that it matters. He's not winning the Auburn job. But the best bet for Walker White was to win that job next year, maybe be able to hold off Deuce Knight for 2 years. But I think if Caden Salter's coming in for this year, I mean, why not enter the transfer portal at this point if you're Walker White?
Yeah, I don't see. I mean, I know that the connection there with Hugh Freeze makes sense, but I don't think you don't want to be in a competition if you're going to transfer, right? So I don't see Caden Salter. Hey, I'm going to go compete with Walker White and Deuce Knight. That would be a good quarterback room for Auburn, but I don't know. I think Caden Salter didn't play well this year, so shouldn't he stay at the G5 level? Like, you're telling me he's getting a promotion after this season? Now that I think about it, there are a lot of quarterback situations where we're going to have true freshmen start, because I think Deuce Knight is probably going to start at Auburn. Bryce Underwood is starting at Michigan. I mean, we have, and if Jalen Milroe leaves Alabama, is going to be Ty Simpson and Keelan Russell at Alabama?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe Austin Mack. Austin Mack is going to enter the transfer portal here in a second. But yeah, I mean, just going on a tangent here, I think all three of those guys could end up starting next year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, we just mentioned one, too. There's a possibility if Matt Zollers doesn't flip from Missouri, he's easily going if they don't get anybody from the portal. And right now, we don't have a lot of, sexy names in the portal. There's a realistic shot. I think he could start day one for Missouri. So Leo asks in the chat, does Luke Kromenhoek start at FSU next year? Austin says no. I mean, I don't think he's not played great, but he has also not been horrible. I actually think bringing in Gus Malzahn as the offensive coordinator helps a guy like Luke Kromenhoek. So I think there's a shot that he starts next year. Again, it depends on who else enters the portal and if Norvell wants to go after and pay someone again like he did DJ, and that just failed miserably. I don't know if they do that again, but
I think it might be Kromenhoek. I think you actually undersold him. Like, I know he's your guy. I think he's been the only thing that's worked on FSU when I've watched them this year. It's not perfect. The receivers are terrible. The offense isn't very good. But I think he's been okay.
Oh, dear God. No, the Buckeyes are not going to buy the best quarterback out there. They're not doing that again. It's going to be probably Julian Sand starting next year. I don't know. I'm going to leave myself out of it. I know what I think's actually going to happen, but we'll talk about that for a different day. Decommitments, I should say. Oh, no, let's talk about the G5. G5, Chris. You have on here Travion Rudolph. I'm sorry, is it Trayvon Randolph? Is that his real name?
That's an inside joke. That was 3 years ago. Nobody gets that joke.
Disagree. Chris Moxley laughed. I'm sure Austin laughed somewhere too. Keon Jenkins, Eric Rivers, and Dean Patterson out of FIU. Amari Kelly out of Middle Tennessee. Chase Sowell out of ECU. Amari Hayes out of FAU. Jacob Zeno out of UAB, and Parker Jenkins out of Houston are all players that seem to be entering.
Jacob Zeno or Caden Salter? Don't you think Jacob Zeno is a better player?
Did he get benched this year? Or did he get hurt and just not be able to come back? Because they had Sex Pest Jalen Kitten in there for 9 games this year, and I assume Zeno's too hurt. I don't remember if his injury was ever announced as season ending or not. Maybe it was, but yeah, I don't blame him. I don't think he's that bad. I don't think he's as good as Caden Salter. I don't think he's that
3,100 yards last year, a 70% completion percentage, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He's going to have, this is his 7th year next year. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I don't know. I think you would still go Caden Salter, but yeah. Mox, what do you got on these guys? What can you tell the audience and your thoughts?
I think Eric Rivers is the best player out of all of these wide receiver at FIU who was highly productive this year. Dean Patterson's all right too. Omar Kelly's already been at the P5 level once with Auburn, went down to MTSU, played pretty well, comes back. Not crazy about him. I don't know. Rudolph is good. Not sure he's like a P4 difference maker either. Chase Sowell's good. Not sure he's a P4 difference maker. But it does open a spot for my boy Yannick Smith. So excited about that. But yeah, it's just kind of, I think Eric Rivers is the best player. And a bunch of guys who are probably your wide receiver 3, 4 at the position.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, again, the transfer portal does not open until the 9th, which is a week away, so we will likely see even more names go in there. Go ahead.
Question. Chris, how good is Yannick Smith?
Oh, he's the man. He's my guy. He was a guy who didn't play much wide receiver in high school and played multiple positions. I think he was recruited as an athlete, but primarily wide receiver. 6'3", 215, big body, makes some nice contested catches. Another game against Navy, that was pretty good. But, yeah, I like him a lot.
Between Yannick Smith and Joseph Williams, they're freshman G5 receivers. It's just like those guys, well, Williams specifically, I might say you got to take him in the 2nd round next year in supplemental drafts. I got to figure out because that dude is a monster. Why? I mean,
they're going to get a new head coach.
Mm-hmm.
He's a freshman. He was obviously recruited by the staff. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's good though. I mean, he's legit. I just don't know.
He's like a man amongst boys at that level.
I've started to.
He looks really good because the rest of Tulsa is terrible.
That is your go-to round, by the way. Every time you like some player, you're like, it's a 2nd round supplemental draft pick every time.
Well, I mean,
that's a little high, but I got the point.
Yeah. And I agree. Alan says in the chat, the portal will get hotter as playoff teams lose. I agree. It'll be interesting. There's a lot of people who think these players will opt out of playoff games. I don't think that'll happen, but at least not in the first year. Maybe as it goes on. This year, I think most of those guys will play. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Obviously, one of them, you mentioned the Buckeyes earlier. They've got 4 quarterbacks on the roster right now. Someone mentioned Devin Brown earlier. You've got Lincoln Kineholz, Aaron Nolan, Julian Sand. Like, there is no way all 4 of those guys are staying, especially with Taven St. Clair coming in as well, who's reaffirmed all over the place that he's staying with Ohio State. So now you have 5 quarterbacks in that room. And they just added the top quarterback, I believe, in the 2026 class. So, like, most of those guys, I think, are at some point going to transfer out. So it'll be interesting to see, maybe where some of them go. Again, I still am a very big fan of Aaron Noland. I think he is a quarterback that could be very good, even at a P4 spot if he goes somewhere. Devin Brown, I think due to injury, we've never really gotten to see what Devin Brown is. I mean, that Missouri Bowl game, he was knocked out in like the 4th drive. Like, I don't know that you can really put that on him. So it'll be interesting to see where some of these guys go. And then again, we'll have so many other Players probably entering the portal again as it opens up.
Are you sure any of those quarterbacks are going to be at Ohio State after they fire Ryan Day?
Well, again, that was a conversation we were having before the show starts, and I really don't want to get into it. I don't know that Ryan Day is going to get fired. I'll just say what I said this in the Discord. I think it was this morning. I was answering a question about the NLI. I know for a fact that there is a massive push for them to get Taven St. Clair on campus in January. And I think it's because they want him to start from day one. The way they talk
why
about
wouldn't
him,
he be on campus for the playoff?
So he won't be, because now that the playoff has changed. So in the past, they would want them there for that, but the playoffs start December 20th now. I don't think they can be there that early. I think it has
only
to be
if they go to the national championship game.
Yeah, so it would have to be in January. So it'd be I think the Final Four and then the national championship. He could be there for them in January if he gets there around that time. I don't think they can get on campus by the December 20th game. I could be wrong on that, but I think after that he can be there for that, because not just him, they're pushing for Quincy Porter as well. From everything I've heard, they want both those guys on campus as soon as possible. I think a lot of that is they're pushing for that. Again, I know a lot of people think Julian Saint's going to take the job. I've said before, and I'll say again, that was a Bill O'Brien guy. Bill O'Brien is no longer there. We've seen, whether people like it or not, Ryan Day stays committed to his guys. We saw him give Kyle McCord the job over all reports saying Devin Brown was better than Kyle McCord in spring. I mean, Felix and I went back and forth for felt like 3 or 4 months about Kyle McCord, Devin Brown, who's going to win that job. Devin Brown, what did Devin Brown get? A couple shots in the red zone before he got hurt? Like, I really think that Taven St. Clair is a guy that Day has been going after for years. I think there's a shot he starts from day one. So if that happens, Mox, I think all those guys transfer out except for one. Probably Lincoln Conholes is the one who stays, and everybody else transfers out to get their opportunities. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I understand, Alan. Hey, look, I mean, you can't see it because you can't see my Justin Fields jersey. I am a Buckeyes fan. Not thrilled about what happened on Saturday either, but we'll save this for a different time. I don't want to dive into an Ohio State thing here. So, oh, great. Here we go. I'm starting to doubt the intelligence of the OSU beat writers based on how they've covered QB competitions. I mean, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, like I said, they've said multiple things, and it has not necessarily been right. But again, I wanted to go back to Caden Salter really quick. If he does go to Auburn, because he was a top 5 fantasy quarterback, not last year, obviously not this season, but the season before. If he goes to Auburn and is back with him, do you guys think he returns his fantasy value?
No. I just don't think he's that level of player. I think you got really hot with him.
Okay. Do you agree, Felix? Caden Salter.
No.
He was a top CFF quarterback a couple years ago for multiple years in a row with his head coach. If he goes to Auburn, do you think he returns?
I think Caden Salter might be the next. Who was the Toledo quarterback who went to Baylor? He might be the next one, though. Daquan Finn.
I was so excited for that transfer. I did a video on.
You were excited for Daquan Finn at Baylor?
Yeah, I did a video on the channel. I was like, man, this could be it.
Because he played well against Ohio State one time 2 years ago.
He did play well against Ohio State. Yeah.
It was more the offense that they had there, and then just him bringing some rushing upside. Yeah, it was just, it ended up not being him. Yeah, just wrong quarterback. Yeah, it was right in everything, just the wrong quarterback. All right, moving on to some decommitments real quick before we jump into the coaching hires, and we're going to get out of here. Stay tuned into the channel. Hit the like and subscribe button, because for, I think, once a year, we are going to see a live Campus Life episode tonight. Austin Nace and Colin Decker. Hopefully Colin is wearing more than just a robe, but they will be live on the YouTube channel tonight doing the Campus Life episode.
We're running evening primetime programming here for college football. You got us right now. Austin and Colin are going live when? At like 8 or something like that?
Yeah.
Soon we're going to have an afternoon morning show or something like that, and we'll just be on, 24/7. That's what we're headed towards. How would that be if Campus to Canton was like channel 207 right next to ESPN and Fox Sports?
I can tell you what would happen is people are going to hate you and me, because I feel like we're going to be doing most of the shows together. We'll talk off air some comments that was made about our chemistry on air that I thought was actually semi-funny, but it would be a lot of you and me yelling at each other all the time.
What? No, don't do that to the audience. Just tell us now. You don't do that to the audience.
I'd like to air certain things. Someone that I've talked about recently has mentioned the chemistry that you and I have on air.
Chemistry? I hate this guy. What are you talking about?
I know. That's what I said. Yeah, that's what I said too, actually. I was like, I only really like Austin and Chris. I hate that other guy. But anyways, Jerome Miles, he's my wide receiver 3 in this 2025 class, but he is a top 10 wide receiver in all the services. He tore his ACL back in August. This is his second knee injury in high school. He is listed as a .985 athlete. His comps in our database are Jordy Nelson, Julio Jones, and Allen Robinson. Now, we talked about this before. Typically, when Steve Wilfong puts in his crystal ball for a flip, he already knows where it's going. He announced, I believe it was a couple hours ago, Texas A&M. So I would assume that's probably fairly safe to say he's going to the Aggies now. Does he go in there as the number 1? I know that he was an athlete coming in. Terry Bussey has been fairly good as a true freshman this year. But, I mean, they're losing most of that room. They don't have anybody in there. And, again, the fear you have to have with Jerome Miles, he did tear that ACL in August, so he may not be fully healthy coming into the year. But I think you can look at him the way Chris Klein used Jace Brown the prior year before coming over to Texas A&M. I think he would be a good fit for that offense. You have to be worried about the knee, though.
We got this 2 years in a row. Jerrion Dickey 2 years ago, Micah Hudson this year. Coming in to camp with knee injuries at wide receiver, not touching Jerome Miles. Sorry. I mean, he looked good at Corner Canyon, too. He was playing with Zach Wilson's little brother for a year there. No, I'm not. I mean, could he be the number 1 there at Texas A&M? Maybe, but he's going to start off slow, 1, because he's a freshman, 2, because he's still going to be recovering from the ACL. And that's going to be a player that will let the rest of the community, well, maybe you guys are going to push him out. I won't be saying, hey, go draft this player simply because of the knee injury. I mean, how many examples do we need at that position coming into camp with knee injuries? No, I'm not touching it.
You agree, Mox?
Yeah, you know the Kiki Palmer meme where she's talking about she's getting shown a video and she's like, I hate to say it, but I don't, or she says, I hate to say it, I don't mean to sound ridiculous, but I don't know who that man is. I have no idea who Jerome Miles is. I haven't paid any attention.
Well, I mean,
depending on Chris is not the recruiting guy, Matthew. You got to know your teammates, but he agrees with the sentiment on injuries. Okay.
That's what I was asking. Do you agree with that? That's what I was asking. I was going to give my tank on the recruiting side because I know Chris isn't on there.
Sorry. Yes, I think that the injury process has been borne out time and time again. Definitely the way especially if people are ranking him really highly because of athleticism. Like 2 knee injuries, even if he recovers, that might just not be the same player.
That's fair. Depending on where he goes, I wonder, because of what Felix mentioned with Jerrion Dickey and Micah Hudson, if we see Jerome Miles fall now in supplemental drafts because of that fear, if he then becomes a value, which was what I was going to kind of say in there. Because if he does, I actually think I'd be willing to take the shot on him, especially going to a place like Texas A&M. I think there's a realistic shot once he is healthy, even if it's not till October, he could get on the field, break a couple year 1-0s, and that's really all we care about. The same thing you could say about Micah Hudson. Say what you want about him coming in, unhealthy and not really making his way at Texas Tech. He passed year 1-0s. If he does land at a good spot, I do think his value will increase. One other wide receiver I want to touch on, because again, Wilfong has put in a flip alert for him. Derek Meadows, he is considered a top 5 wide receiver in the 2025 class. Now, we here at Campus Canton are not high on him. He is not even, I believe, in our top 15 wide receivers. So this may be one of the things where we go back and look at, did we get this right, or the services? But he is listed as a top 5 wide receiver for all 4 of the services. Listed to possibly flip from LSU till Alabama. He is listed as a 0.696 athlete. Best comp, Josh Dotson in our athletic database, which I don't think is a great comp overall. But could he be
a first-round draft pick? Josh Dotson was a first-round draft pick.
That's fair. Could he be a good number 2 to Ryan Williams? And we just talked about, obviously, what could happen if Jalen Milroe goes. I don't think Ty Simpson's going to be the guy, but we'll see what happens with the Alabama offense, Felix.
I don't know, Matthew. You would be in the best position to answer this question.
No, don't go for you. Derek Meadows is not it. That's my opinion. I don't think that he is going to do anything. Yeah, cool talk. Great guys, great job, guys. Coaches. Oh wait, no, Caleb Johnson has announced that he is going to the NFL, Felix. He's a guy that you talked about. Finished his career in college with Iowa, 508 carries for 2,779 yards and 30 touchdowns, added 29 receptions for 240 yards and 2 touchdowns. What do you think his projected draft capital could be in this I think it's fair to say semi-weaker class with some of the top names like Henderson, Judkins, Edwards really disappointing this year.
It wouldn't surprise me if he's the second running back off the board. I think at that position, we've kind of known that the NFL likes 215 plus pounds, and he is that. Now, I think the lack of like top end speed is probably going to keep him out of the second round, which is the first round for running back. So he's probably going to be, late second, third round, somewhere in there. But, in more of a smooth glider type running back than what you see from someone like even Ashton Genty, whose, breaking tackle ability is really pronounced. So, but I do think that he's a potential bell cow. I think that his receiving ability was underutilized at Iowa. There's a play against Iowa State where he catches this ball in the backfield and there's a defensive tackle right on him. And the ball was thrown pretty much on the ground. He picks it up off his toes, spins around, and runs away from the D tackle who was 12 inches away from him. I think that he's a complete player, but probably doesn't have the high end ability. But we're talking about like dynasty rookie drafts. He's definitely going to be in that 5 to 8 range somewhere, at least in my opinion, as the second running back off the board.
You agree, Mox?
Yeah, I don't know if I have him as RB. Would you rather have him or Amari Hampton?
I'd rather have Johnson. I think Johnson has a higher ceiling. I can't even think of a comp for Caleb Johnson, but Amari Hampton to me is Ramondre Stevenson-esque, which is our RB2 range. So, but I think that Caleb Johnson definitely in the receiving game, I don't think it's comparable. Like you're not Amari Hampton. I don't think that skill set is somebody that you're going to deploy like as a focus of your passing game. I could see Caleb Johnson being a 30-40 catch running back at the next level.
I honestly agree. I really like him. I thought his season was awesome. I don't know what he was displaying in practice that the Iowa staff just didn't want to play him for the
Tim Lester, my old quarterback in the 90s for Western Michigan University, who used to throw the ball to Steve Neal, started Kamari Mouton, whatever his name is, over Caleb Johnson after Caleb Johnson had 700 yards as a freshman. I don't know what he was seeing either, but Caleb Johnson probably he's going to be right up there. Well, he's not going to win the Doak Walker, but he's going to be a finalist for the Doak Walker. He should have started.
Yeah, I think Janty's probably locked in to be the Doak Walker this year. Johnson is an 88th percentile athlete. Very interesting comps in our database, including one Amari Hampton. So it'll be interesting to see where those two go. His other comps, Jamal Lewis and Quinshon Judkins. So very, very interesting.
Jamal Lewis was just so physical and first step explosive. It's just,
let's see here. Also, we talked about him earlier in the show. Felix said that he thinks Kevin Concepcion could go into Missouri and replace him. Luther Burden has also announced that he is entering the draft. I wanted to talk about this with Felix because he's kind of been the guy's number one hater for the past 3 years. But your thoughts on draft capital? I put this in there, not that Mel Kiper has him as his number 19th player on his big board. So we know at least Mel Kiper likes him. I know you have kind of talked about he is kind of limited in what he can do as a wide receiver. I think you've talked about before he's more of like Cordero Patterson. So what do you view his NFL future as of right now in just going into the NFL with the limited things we've seen from him in college?
Well, let's just use, the best wide receivers in the NFL as a comparison. Malik Neighbors, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins. Who else is out there? They make plays down the field in that 10 to 15 yard range consistently. That's where they get separation. That's not how Luther Burden has ever been used. Now, he was kind of used that way last year, but is he a slot wide receiver? Is he Cooper Kupp? Is he, Ladd McConkey? No, this dude is a tweener between X wide receiver, slot wide receiver, and running back. You know who that is? Laviska Shenault, Cordero Patterson. Like, if they go to the right system and an offensive coordinator is going to use them that way, that's fine. But if you think this dude is going to line up at X and beat Jalen Ramsey in routes, you just don't know ball. So it's not that he's not a talented player, but I think that he has to be used a specific way to reach his ceiling, and there's no guarantee. Cordell Patterson wasn't used, that way. Laviska Shenault should have switched to running back a long time ago. Like, you don't know that that they're going to be used the way that will allow them to reach their ceiling.
Yeah, the slot position is always so productive for Drinkwitz because he schemes that player up. I mentioned the same thing in the show. It's been a thing going back to his time at Boise. How much of that, like, creative, more downfield stuff is scheme related rather than Burden succeeding? I don't know. And that I share those same concerns because I don't think he's good beyond, like, intermediate deep. He just doesn't. And he doesn't have to be that type of receiver, but that's where he's being valued. That's more the concern.
You know what? I would love him. I would love him in the Jarvis Landry rookie Miami role. And Jarvis Landry had like a less than 5-yard ADOT. If you want to use Luther Burden that way, he could be great for fantasy. But to think that he's going to be a traditional X or a traditional slot wide receiver, I just don't think that that's the case.
All right, let's talk about some of those coaches who have been moving around. Now, we mentioned Oklahoma a little bit earlier. They are now hiring Washington State's former offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle. Chris, I mean, this sounds like a good move for Jackson Arnold and possibly this offense. They did just have 3 wide receivers, I believe, decommit from this 2025 class. So that might end up hurting them, but they still could have Deion Burks. An interesting running back room as well. What are your thoughts on Arbuckle coming over to Oklahoma?
I think he's got to be willing to play ball with the personnel that he has. This is not a team that could pass protect. You probably can't drop back 45 times a game like he wants to. The running back really wasn't a big piece in this offense outside of the pass game. Saw a little bit of Wayshawn Parker, and he looked good at times, but he just not his system. So he either has to adapt, or I think it could be tough sledding. But overall, I mean, it's an upgrade. No matter what way you look at it, he's a really sharp offensive mind who's 29 years old.
Do you think this increases Jackson Arnold's value at all? I mean, we've seen that kind of roller coaster this season.
Could it get worse?
I mean, he could get benched again.
He should still be benched now.
That's fair.
Yes, in a vacuum, it has to increase his value. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought John Mateer with them. I really do. I mean, I'm not the biggest John Mateer as a SEC level quarterback fan, but I do think it's a real possibility.
I mean, I'll be honest, I don't think Brady Cook was an SEC level quarterback, and yet he started for 2 years in Missouri and was comparable at times. So let's have that discussion. If John Mateer follows Arbuckle to Oklahoma, what do we think happens with Arnold? And I mean, Hawkins probably definitely transfers at that point. He's a 3. So what happens do you think Mateer has a chance to beat out Jackson Arnold?
Other way around, I think the question should be asked. Does Jackson Arnold have a chance to beat out John Mateer?
Okay.
Because I don't know that he does.
It would be a Sam Heward, Michael Penix Jr. situation. Like if you're following the coach who calls the plays.
Never got his opportunity.
Right. Yeah, and it could be the same thing with Jackson Arnold.
Well, I guess right now. I mean,
Did Heward transfer to Utah and play?
It was like Sacramento something.
No, he transferred to Sacramento State, and now he's back at He transferred back up to Utah last year. He's still at Utah.
UC Davis.
No, it was Cal Poly. You're right. It was Cal Poly. Yeah. Okay. And now he's at Utah. He's backing up Isaac Wilson. Well, I mean, it's something you need to watch for because there has been reports, nothing confirmed yet, but there have been multiple reports that John Mateer is planning on entering the portal. So if we expect him to possibly follow Arbuckle to Oklahoma, that could be, a scary thing for your Jackson Arnold shares, especially, again, 5-star quarterback that a lot of people thought was going to be very, very good at the college football level. So
it's also a concern for your John Mateer shares. Like going against the Mountain West schedule is a lot different than going against an SEC schedule. So like he's an obvious downgrade.
But I think
one thing we highlighted at the beginning of the year that, hey, this Washington State team is basically a Power 5 team playing in a G5 conference. So roster these guys. This might be a time to trade John Mateer also.
That's what I was going to say. If he ends up going to Oklahoma, people are going to see him follow Ben Arbuckle. They might still think he's valued as a top, because I believe he finishes QB1 on the season. So, I mean, trade now if you don't think he's going to be able to reproduce that at the SEC level. Zach Kitley, who is a guy, 2-3 years ago we were talking about. I know, Felix, you said could have been the next head coach somewhere, was like a really promising offensive mind. He is now taking over for Tom Herman at FAU. Any thoughts? Nothing. Just do you want to move
we're going to see who the FAU players are, and we'll care about them because Zach Kitley is there. We'll care about their slot wide receiver, like we did with Jarrett Stearns, like we did with Miles Price, like we did. Who was it this year? Coy Eakin.
We'll
that Western Kentucky magic is just gone though. The shine off that Western Kentucky it's gone.
Yeah, I agree. There were a lot of Texas Tech fans that wanted him gone this year. And he's never – I'm just really skeptical what his recruiting is going to be like. Like, yes, you're in Florida, so advantage, but I don't know. It's just a really risky hire. But it's the opposite of what – well, they had Tom Herman before him, so it's not quite the opposite. But it is an interesting approach the athletics department is taking to this coaching search.
Wasn't he the one who recruited Micah Hudson, though? Like, I think.
I would think so. I don't know, but I would think Micah. I would think Zach Kitley said, "I damn near got Jarrett Stearns 2,000 yards receiving. You should come to this school." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going there." It wouldn't surprise me.
It was Justin Johnson.
The case.
According to 247 Sports,
you think Micah Hudson's going to join Zach Kitley at FAU?
That'd be a pretty big step down. No, I don't think so. I was curious if, it was more to the recruiting discussion. If he was able to get a 5-star wide receiver to come to Texas Tech, obviously a little bit different in the Texas Tech to FIU here, or FAU, a little bit different there. But if he was able to get a 5-star wide receiver to go somewhere they've never gotten one, I don't know that he would be horrible at recruiting, but it was a different coach that was able to bring him in. It was reported to be the guy. Appalachian State fires coach Sean Clark, 6 years with the team. In 64 games, he finished 40-24. They had 5 winning seasons. 2024 was actually their only non-winning season under him and the only non-bowl eligible season. Top candidates, Kerwin Bell, Todd Hartley, Trey Lamb, Jonathan, and DJ Smith. Mox?
The program just expects more. They should be the top program in the Sun Belt, and they weren't that the last 2-3 seasons under Clark. It's just not going that direction. Interesting names. I don't really know that I love any of them. I think DJ Smith is really interesting. He's been the co-coordinator at Mizzou, D coordinator at Mizzou. He played on those App State teams. He was an All-American level player. So I think that'd be a nice fit. Trey Lamb seems like a really popular name. I think he's a really good coach. Did some good stuff with Gardner Webb 2 years ago, now at ETSU. Kerwin Bell is the other name that I've heard. And so he's the Western Carolina coach. He's the father of Pitt offensive coordinator Cade Bell. They run the same system. That's kind of what you'd be bringing over. So I don't know. I don't know that any of those are sexy, but they're definitely better names than the way Sean Clark is trending.
West Virginia fires Neil Brown. He had a 6-year career as well with West Virginia. In 72 games, he finished 37-35. 3 winning seasons, only 4 bowl eligible seasons. Very interesting names that have been thrown out here for West Virginia. Jimbo Fisher, Barry Odom, Shannon Dawson, Rich Rodriguez, Mike Denbrock, and Jeff Munkin. I don't know that I would love any of those going to West Virginia. Mike Denbrock, I think, has been really good as an offensive coordinator over the past couple of years and what he's done. Rich Rodriguez, I feel like, has bounced back with what he's done as of late. Does Munkin leave Army with what he just did this past year? I don't know. It's an interesting list. Jimbo and who was the other one? I don't know. Barry Odom, I don't know, would he jump back into coaching that quickly after just stepping back? But Shannon Dawson and Jimbo Fisher, I feel like, are not names I would go after.
Rich Rod would be the funniest hire.
Why funny? Why funny?
Just the way that he left them for the Michigan job, I think would be kind of hilarious to see him come back.
I don't remember the circumstances of him leaving for the Michigan job, but it's unequivocal that the Rich Rod era was the best era that West Virginia has had, in the last 30 years? I think it makes sense to do 2.0 with Rich Rod the same way, Arkansas did with Bobby Petrino 2.0. Yeah, bring him back.
It would be funny. I don't know if any of these names are good. Jimbo Fisher's on the list because he's from West Virginia. Like, that's the reason.
So is Nick Saban. Why don't we just go ahead and have
right?
Nick Saban coach this? Yeah.
The name that I saw is going to be interviewing that's actually interesting to me is Andy Kotelnicki, offensive coordinator at Penn State.
Man.
I think that'd be pretty interesting.
If he goes, do we think Drew Allard just goes to the NFL?
I don't know. I don't think he can, but you sure wish that Kotelnicki would stick around. But he's earned it.
Yeah. This one's not nearly as sexy, but Purdue fires Ryan Walters in just 2 years in the job, 24 games. He finished 5-19, 0 winning seasons. Top candidates: Dan Mullen, Jason Candle, Tyson Helton, and again, Barry Odom.
Is this the worst job in the Power Four?
I think so.
Northwestern. Northwestern.
At least
yeah,
they
but
have a ton of money.
I was gonna say, I don't think Northwestern fans I don't think they're unrealistic.
They don't have expectations. Well, they do, but their expectations are pretty low.
Yeah.
You now have a Purdue squad that had success under Braum, and now they're saying, well, why can't we win 8 games? Why can't we win 9 games? Because the dynamic of the Big Ten has changed, and you are a 5 to 6 win team, 7 when you're lucky. Like, that's just who Purdue is. It's not a team that you expect to compete for conference championships. They were there 2 years ago. They're not hiring a coach to do that again. I don't think Dan Mullen would take this job. If Dan Mullen wants to get back into coaching, he will get a better job than this, not living in Purdue and winning 4 or 5 games a year. He's just better coach than, I think, this level. Jason Candle would be hilarious because Jason Candle, I don't think is a good coach. I do think he's a really poor coach. He never meets expectation. It's kind of insane watching Toledo because they're by far the best team in that conference. Tyson Helton is a name that I've heard a couple times. I think he's going to find a job outside of Western Kentucky, to be honest. And our Western Kentucky insiders seem to be hinting as much. So it'll be interesting. Barry Odom, the West Virginia job is better than this job. So if he's in contention for both, he'll take West Virginia. I think he does leave UNLV. I'm not sure it's for this job.
2 things before we get out of here really quick. I don't know if this is like massively news breaking, but an interesting play. I think if you went to the G5, Malachi Singleton, the backup quarterback at Arkansas, has entered the portal. He entered while we were doing this show. And then one of the reasons I just absolutely love college football, the flight trackers are up currently, and they are tracking UCF's executive flying to what looks like to be meeting with Liberty head coach Jeremy Chadwell to possibly be their new head coach, as Gus Malzahn took the offensive coordinator spot at Florida State. So
isn't running it back with Jamie Chadwell just what you did with Gus Malzahn?
I was just thinking that's the same thing that you got with Gus Malzahn. Yeah.
Real quick, I don't know what he's referring to here, Mox, but David Cakes wants to know if we can get an official Moxley statement on Shador/Colorado post Sean Lewis in 2024.
I expected the hiring of Pat Shurmur to mean they wouldn't throw as much. Turns out they threw even more.
That's fair.
I was wrong. I don't know how I project Colorado. It also hurts when you can't run the ball. Like, you have no run game whatsoever. Like, you don't even try. It's that bad. So, yeah, Colorado post Sean Lewis was apparently a more pass-heavy team, which I did not have on my bingo card.
Yeah. All right. Felix, Mox, anything else?
No, we got a comment
Wednesday, 1 p.m., we are doing National Signing Day, covering the freshman class, the 2025 freshman class from a fantasy perspective. We'll have analysis. We'll have a mock draft. We'll be talking about these guys. We'll get you ready if you're playing in campus to Canton leagues, what your freshman drafts are going to look like. Tune in. I'm going to make Matthew wear a suit. Tune in 1 p.m. We're going live at 1 p.m. People got jobs here. We're taking the day off. We're working for you. So tune in, like that video. It's already up, so you can go ahead and hit that notify me button on the YouTube page. The show is already there, so go ahead, subscribe to the channel, like the video. We're trying to grow college fantasy, support what it is that we're doing.
I'm glad you did that because I wasn't going to sell it quite as good as you did. But also make sure to hit that bell icon on the channel because, again, Austin Nace and Colin Decker will be going live here in a couple hours for Campus Life. They rarely do so. It'll be nice to see Colin on screen again. It's been a while since we've seen Colin live. So make sure to have that bell icon turned on so you do not miss them going live for Campus Life. We will then, again, catch you guys. At least Felix and myself will catch you guys on Wednesday. Maybe Mox. I don't know. Maybe we'll do Campus to Canton live on Wednesday night. We'll see. There's going to be a lot of streaming on Wednesday, but we will catch you guys again later.